3, 2, 1, 0.
It's that time. It's that time of the week again. It's Monday at 7 o'clock. It is time for Monday Night Nerd. Hope you all are having a great week. Happy National Truth and Reconciliation Day. I hope you all wore your orange shirts today. I did. I was decked out in double orange. I had my orange shirt on and my orange sweater. It is a good day today. It is Monday Night Nerd, and we are going to be talking about those heroes in a half shell, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. You're probably wondering, why are we randomly talking about the TMNT, folks? Well, we're talking about TMNT because, well, it just kind of had a big celebration at London Comic-Con that I unfortunately was not able to attend. However, a good buddy of mine who is usually in the chat, Alex, was working with Mr. Kevin Eastman from the TMNT world, co-creator of the Turtles. And I was super jealous. So I went, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to talk about 5 TMNT movies, the retro movies, and what my thoughts of each one of them are, because I have been a Turtles fan since inception. It is one of my first fandoms, and I've seen the first few movies a ton. I've seen the Michael Bay ones. I've seen the animated one. We're going to talk all about that in a few minutes. But first, there's another thing that I watched over the weekend, and I want to talk about it because I am a hardcore wrestling fan. I've been a fan of wrestling for almost 30 years. I started watching wrestling back in 1996, the end of 96, beginning of 97. When Bret Hart was the WWF champion, WWE champion, can't say F anymore. He's not a panda. And over the years, Mr. McMahon, Vince McMahon, has owned the WWE. And over the past couple years, there have been many scandals that have come out about Vince McMahon and his history and et cetera, et cetera. And he is no longer with the WWE. WWE was bought by the Endeavor Corporation and is now co-owned with the UFC. And because of all the lawsuits, Vince McMahon is no longer a part of WWE. However, WWE had started making this documentary series before Vince McMahon was let go / quit. So a lot of this was some of the first real interviews that were done with Vince McMahon. Vince McMahon is a very, very private guy. So to have him sit down and actually talk about a lot of the lawsuits and scandals that have been surrounded him over the decades was really intriguing. And to have Netflix put this out was even more intriguing because Netflix partnered with WWE earlier this year and announced that WWE Raw, their flagship show, as well as almost every pay-per-view going forward as of January 1st, 2025, will be on Netflix. So WWE will be a Netflix property. So this was very interesting to have Netflix go ahead with this documentary to talk all about Vince McMahon and kind of go through a lot of the dirt that hardcore wrestling fans were well aware of, but also kind of shed light to the people who aren't hardcore fans like myself. That's a big deal. Says Noah. Yeah, it's a big deal getting WWE on Netflix. It's something that a lot of wrestling fans, including myself, have talked about over the years, that is one of the few things that a lot of these streaming services don't have, is a live broadcast. And now Netflix is the first one to really take that by the reins. I know Amazon and I think Apple have done things with the NFL, but this will be a weekly show. Monday nights will be live on Netflix, and all of the pay-per-views, one a month, will be on Netflix as well. So this is pretty big for wrestling fans. So this documentary was 6 episodes, an hour each, and to say that I was sitting there waiting with bated breath Friday night when it dropped is an understatement, because I wanted to see what was talked about, and a lot of things were brought up that WWE has kind of shied away from. Pretty much every lawsuit that has ever gone through WWE was mentioned. There was a scandal back in the early 90s about certain people's higher up in the company bringing in underage boys to help build the ring crews, and things allegedly happened to them. That's a big one. There was definitely some things that happened in the ring. You know, the Montreal screw job with Bret Hart was definitely mentioned. The steroid scandal in the mid 90s was definitely brought up. This is one of the first times in a long time that Owen Hart's death was brought up, and that is a big sore spot for the WWE, that Owen Hart passed away tragically in 99 from a fall at the top of the arena. A lot of talk between the wrestlers that were on the documentary and Vince of should the show have continued. They brought up Chris Benoit, that if you don't know about the Chris Benoit tragedy, boy, you are a lucky person. You can Google what happened to Chris Benoit and his family in the mid 2000s. They brought that up and talked all about that, which was shocking that they were so open about it, especially Vince being open about it. It really was a who's who of different wrestlers were on there. Pretty much anybody who has been a name in the WWE who is still around was there. Hogan, Cena, Brett, The Rock, who else? Cody Rhodes. A lot of big names were giving their opinions on it. They don't go into a lot of the current lawsuit that's going on with Vince with the possible sex trafficking and stuff like that. The documentary points out that there was one final interview that was supposed to be done with Vince, and it was supposed to happen the day after that charge came out, and Vince canceled that shoot. So there isn't much about that in the documentary because it is an ongoing trial, and obviously the company doesn't want to say anything that could be misconstrued. There wasn't a lot of new stuff that I wasn't aware of. There was definitely some footage that was shown throughout the documentary that I have not seen, and I'm pretty well versed in a lot of the historical stuff for WWE. It's hard to say it didn't paint Vince in a great light, because Vince kind of doesn't paint himself in a great light sometimes. He had a very rough childhood. There was definitely some abuse that is mentioned throughout the documentary, as well as some sexual misconduct when he was a boy. So it really paints Vince into almost a human, to a point where this guy went through a lot as a young boy. And to see what he did later on in the WWE, of not just, kind of making out with every female on the roster, but just, I think it was Paul Heyman that said Vince's biggest thing was he made a world that he could control because he grew up in a world that he couldn't. And I thought that was absolutely the best way to describe it. There is so much talking about things that he couldn't control growing up, and now he felt like he was able to. And unfortunately, he took that, it appears, a little too far. I do think this was probably the last time they're ever going to mention Vince, especially with all the trial and scandals and stuff that are going on currently. I do think that they'll probably mention something if he is to pass away. When he passes away, they'll probably do a mention of it, but I don't think they will go into a whole Monday Night Raw where they're going to pay tribute to him, just because of how black of a cloud that is over him now. It is, I'd say it's a great watch. Again, it is 6 hours of documentary. So if you're a fan and you want to sit down and watch it, you can. If you're a big wrestling fan like me, you probably won't find a lot in there that's really earth-shattering that you didn't already know. I think a lot of us were expecting there to be a bombshell or something that we didn't know, especially the way the trailer made it seem. But to be fair, it's sort of like we already know all that stuff. So it would have been hard to have something come out in that documentary that the hardcore fans that I've been a fan for 30 years and I didn't know about. So I agree. I think it was a great documentary. I'm probably going to watch it again after a while and kind of go through and see if there's anything that kind of jumps out at me a little more. But if you're a fan, watch it. There is obviously some sensitive subjects in there when it comes to different lawsuits that came through when it comes to sexual allegations and stuff. So if you're triggered by that stuff, it might not be a watch for you. But if you're a hardcore wrestling fan and you want to know more about these things, and probably one of the last things that's ever going to have Vince McMahon and WWE tied together, watch it. It's available on Netflix. You probably have a subscription, so highly recommend it for certain members of the wrestling community. Other than that, I really haven't done much when it comes to watching anything. I started Resident Evil Village on the PS5 yesterday or a couple days ago. I'm enjoying that so far. It is probably one of the most fun Resident Evil games I've played in a while. I love 7, but this one seems to be a little more fun. Yeah, I really don't have a review so far. I've only probably played it for about an hour, but so far I'm enjoying it. Once I get through it, I will definitely let you guys know what my thoughts are. Yeah, that's kind of been it. I was on live with Freakish Workshop a couple days ago talking about cosplay. I talked about it in the pre-show. This weekend, we are going to be, and I say we because someone who is usually in chat, I think they're a little busy right now. Pretty Nerdy Crystal and myself will be at Niagara Games Con in St. Catharines. We're gonna have a lot of fun there this Sunday. I'm gonna have a table. I'm gonna have a booth. I'm gonna have my props there. If you guys like my stuff, you should definitely swing by because I'm gonna have some stuff there that you may not have seen. I'm gonna try and bring out some things that I've wanted to showcase, but I really don't have, I really don't feel like bringing it to a fan expo. So definitely swing by. I can't wait. It's gonna be a lot of fun. Frightmare is coming up in a couple weeks. I'll be there on the Saturday volunteering. And then in November, I have HeartCon, which is the new con in Northern Toronto, I should say. It's all about cosplay. It's all about photographers. You should go because we're going to do a whole bunch of photo shoots. We're going to do a whole bunch of networking. It's a big building they've rented out. There's going to be backdrops all over the place. If you want tickets, go to HeartCon on Instagram and you should type in, if you want a ticket, use the code Myers10, MYERS 10, and it'll get you some percentages off. And it also shows them that I'm a really good guest and that makes me look good. It also saves you some cash. I think that's the main point. But yeah, throw in the tag Myers10 in the coupon code. It'll get you some money off. And hopefully I can see you guys there because I can't wait to just hang out with you guys. Usually, at a con, we're all running around doing stuff, but I wouldn't mind just hanging out with you cosplayers and just shooting the shit for a while. So that's what it looks like HeartCon is going to be. So I'm really excited to go to that. That is kind of it. Right now, we're going to jump into the main event. If you're still here, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, guys. It means a ton to me that you guys take your Mondays and you spend it here with me. There's 7 of you in chat right now, and that means a lot that you guys are spending your Monday night with me. Yeah, like, subscribing, all those things. Sponsor, as always, my beautiful, loving, amazing, talented wife. She's always the sponsor of this show. She is an amazing person. She's great. She pushes me into doing things in the best way possible so many times where I probably would be stubborn and just be like, I don't want to do it. And I get some amazing experiences, this being one of them, because if she didn't encourage me to do this, I wouldn't be doing this 73 episodes later. We're at episode 73 of this podcast. I still can't believe it. But anyways, my wife, incredible. She will always be my sponsor. Hun, I love ya. All right. Let's go into TMNT world. Folks, grab your slices of pizza, grab your nunchucks. Let's talk about the Turtles. Why are we doing the Turtles? Well, as I said at the beginning, Mr. Kevin Eastman was in London, Ontario. I did not get to meet him, unfortunately. However, my good buddy Alex was able to pick me up an autograph, which means a ton to me to add to my collection because I am a Turtles fan. What kid in the 90s isn't a Turtles fan? Kids of now are Turtles fans. Like, we're 30 years later and we're still have TMNT fever going on in the world. However, we've only had a couple movies recently, and actually we had really one good one, The Mutant Mayhem, which I've reviewed on the show before. But there are a ton of retro movies, 5 actually. Well, 1, 2, 3, 4, 6. But we're going to talk about them. I want to give you my thoughts because there are some hot takes that I'm going to have on these movies because there are some that I've seen way more than you probably think. And there's some that some people have a really strong opinion, but I don't know. We're going to get into that. Let me just see in chat here. What do we got? We got Collaborated Cosplay saying, I got to meet him and give him one of our TMNT masks. He ended up signing a second one for me. It was a fantastic experience. Such a kind soul. That is exactly what I've heard from everybody that met him. Yeah, Alex was saying he was just signing everything under the sun. He was signing babies' foreheads at that point. He was such a sweet guy, which is exactly what you want to hear. Like someone like that, a legend in the nerd realm. It would just be frustrating if after all that it was like, yeah, he's a jerk. But knowing that he is just that nice of a person and his only cost, I think it was like $35 to get his autograph. And for somebody with that big of a fandom, just being like, yeah, $35, I'm happy. Like that's incredible. So I've heard nothing but great things. But if it wasn't for him, we wouldn't have these movies. So I figured let's sit down and I want to give my thoughts on these movies because they're just incredible and I'm such a fan. So let's kick things off with the OG, the original, the first TMNT movie, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, before they even had the logo that everyone knows from the cartoon. Now, if you haven't seen this movie, what are you doing? Just as much as I would love you to watch this show, turn the show off, go find it online, find it on a streamer or anything. Watch this movie because it's as good today as it was then. The synopsis is like every other TMNT property. You've got the Turtles, you've got Splinter, you've got April, you've got the Foot Clan, you've got Shredder. Shredder wants to take over. The Turtles are going to stop them with their friends. It's paint by numbers when it comes to TMNT, but they did such a good job. And there's a reason for that. And there's two reasons. There's one that everyone knows, and there's one that I didn't even know. And I'm a big fan. So as you can tell, you've got the Turtles, and the Turtles are all done by Jim Henson Studios. And if you know what the name Jim Henson means, you know that that is the guys that need to do the TMNT suits. They did Muppets, they did everything you could think of that has to do with some sort of puppet type character. However, the overlooked thing, which I did not realize until I did the research for this, the director, Stephen Barron. Now, you're probably wondering, I have no idea what that name is. Folks, you know who this guy is, you just don't know his name. And when I tell you why you know him, you're going to fall over in your chair. I'm not lying. Steve Barron is a music video director. And you, as soon as I say that, you probably go, the way the movie looks makes a lot of sense now. This is the guy who directed the music videos for Billie Jean by Michael Jackson, Summer of '69 and Run to You by Bryan Adams, Money for Nothing by Dire Straits, Electric Avenue by Eddie Grant, Baby Jane by Rod Stewart, Africa by Toto, and Take On Me by Aha. If you know anything about music videos, that is a platinum lineup of music videos. This guy gets film. So as soon as I saw that list on his credentials, I went, no crap, he made a good movie. That is an unbelievable resume. And then he makes this. Like, it makes so much sense now. This movie is the most adult take on a kid's franchise you will ever see. You know, there is movies like Batman Returns, for example, or even the Batman that were very dark. And Batman can be, fun. But TMNT, for the most part, is very kid-driven. But this is such an adult take on it, and I don't think it gets the credit that it deserves. I'm not going to say it doesn't, but like it is such a great movie for kids and adults. It's got very adult themes in it, but it also has very good humor and very good kid themes that I feel like the 90s really needed. You know, there was a lot of movies that we grew up with who had those moments where we look back and go, how did that not scar us? Like movies like, I'm going to throw out one, for example. It's not a movie in particular, but the Disney sing-along specials, there is a Grim Grin and Ghosts section of one of the musical VHSs that up until I was like 15, I never watched because it scared the daylights out of me. So having something like this that was such a kid-friendly property, and as Crystal points out in chat, the comics weren't. And that is true. The comics were written more for an adult, but by this time, when you got different color masks, the kids' show is out at this point. So you're getting that kid vibe more than you're going for the adult side. But you have a story, and let's talk about some of the key points in the movie. You have a bunch of kids characters basically, and people that kids wanted to emulate and become, who are dealing with the possible loss of a brother. You know, if you know in the movie, Raph gets the living daylights kicked out of him by the Foot Clan to the point where he is pretty much knocked unconscious for a section of the movie. And each of them grieve with that for a good scene of the movie. You know, Mikey is out throwing nunchucks and dealing with the frustration. You've got Donnie, who's going into his work and getting more involved in that to take his mind off it. You've got Leo, who's trying to be the leader and trying to hold this team together when it's fractured. You've got the four of them dealing with the loss of a father figure in when they don't know what's going on with Splinter. And I'm sorry, that scene with them around the campfire when Splinter's spirit comes up and he says, "I love you all, my sons," it still brings a tear to my eye now, because it's exactly what an adult would, it's definitely what an adult would say to a kid in that moment of, you know, there's only so much I can teach you, and I've taught you everything except for this one lesson. And that is, I might not be here one day, and you will need to move on without me. Like, that is heart-wrenching for a parent who's watching this, but also for a kid who is realizing, like, the Turtles don't know if Splinter's gone or not, and this might be his last message to them. So that is definitely something that is a lot more adult in what is traditionally a kids franchise. And let's be honest, the end when Shredder falls from the top of the roof and lands into the garbage bin and Casey hits that lever, that's a murder. Like, there's no other way to say it. That is a straight murder from Casey Jones. So, you know, and kind of going that into a heartfelt hug with the Turtles and Splinter is kind of a shock if you're a parent. But it's such a good movie. It's cast so well. There are definitely jokes in the movie. There are definitely lines that you'll remember, but it is a great adult take on it that you can take a kid to, and the parents aren't going to be sitting there sleeping. They're going to enjoy the fight coordination. They're going to enjoy the city of New York in itself as a character. So there is nothing, in my opinion, that's wrong with this movie. I watch it at least once or twice a year. It's a great movie, even 30 years later. I still can't say anything bad about it. Crystal says, "I fell in love with Raph," says a lot about me. You know what? It's funny. When I was a kid, obviously because of my name, I grew up loving Mikey. Mikey was my favorite. However, over the past few years, I've actually fallen in love with Donatello more. And that might be because when I was, what age? I was probably 13, 14. I did martial arts training for a couple years. And one of the things that we did near the end before I stopped going was we did weapons training. And the weapon I chose and I loved using was the bow staff. So I started to love Donnie a little more than that, but I also love his problem solving. And I know that's something I'm pretty good at, but I know I could be better at. And yeah, I've just started digging Donnie and his mind a little more than Mikey just being the party animal. I really don't have the anger, so I don't agree with Raph, and Leo, I don't know. Leo's a little too Captain America for me. And I love Captain America, but I don't know. When people say a vanilla leader, I think Leo. I don't think Cap. I don't think of anybody in the leader standpoint. Just he's the most vanilla in my opinion. So that is enough about TMNT 1. I could sit here for the next 2 hours and talk about TMNT 1. Let's jump into the next one, because this is the one that I think a lot of people, including myself, sleep on, because the first one is praised. The third one gets a lot of hate. This one's sort of in the middle. I think the people that grew up with this as their turtle movie appreciate it, because this is the kids' movie. This, when people think of Turtles movies for kids, this is the one that is the kid one. The synopsis of the movie is somewhat similar to the first one, but a little bit different. The turtles are finding out what ooze is, and that ooze was the thing that turned them into the turtles. And Shredder gets the ooze, and Shredder creates his two bad guys, which I think everybody in the movies, everyone previewing this movie before it came out, thought it was going to be Bebop and Rocksteady, because that is the characters from the comic books and the TV show. But we have Toka and Razar in this one. And yes, as Crystal said, the soundtrack in the second one is bomb. Yes, Go Ninja Go is an incredible song. And the rest of the soundtrack is actually pretty good too, but that is obviously the one that stands out. The Vanilla Ice cameo is perfect in my opinion. So when it comes to my fandom of this movie, this is the one movie I did not have. I had the first, I had the third. I did not have this one. So I come to this as probably the one I've seen the least. However, I do not hate this movie. I think it fits perfectly into the kid fandom, but also in the way that I look at Batman 66 and the Adam West show. If you can enjoy the humor and not take it seriously, you can enjoy this movie. If you're someone who is like, I want the original movie times 2, you're going to be greatly disappointed. So you have to set your expectations when you're watching this. I thought it was a very fun movie. The comedy and joke factor has skyrocketed in this one, and that is probably because of I don't want to say it's because of it's probably something similar to Batman Returns, and the infamous story of Batman Returns was that movie came out and they had a sponsorship deal with McDonald's. And if you've seen Batman Returns, it's not the most kid-friendly movie, and McDonald's had a problem with it, and there was a big blah, blah about it. That's why the next Batman movie is Batman Forever. It's super kid-friendly, and the biggest thing is let's make toys out of it. I feel like this is probably deep down a little bit like that, where the parents went into the TMNT movie, and it was really adult, and a lot of parents had a problem with it because they weren't expecting it. Whether it was a good movie or not, I think some of them had a problem, and they said, we need to make it more kid-friendly. So we have this one where they're playing with yo-yos and stuff, and they're not really using their weapons, which is something that happens on the TV show. Specifically in this, there is a new April O'Neil in this movie. The actress who played April in the first one, Judith Hogue, is not in this one. They have recast. I cannot remember her name. She was at London Comic-Con. But it doesn't bother me. And I think this is something that a lot of studios need to understand, is that you can change the character actor. It doesn't matter to a fan, as long as it's not a performance that is uncanny, but also if the person you bring in does as good a job. And I think the actress who plays April in this one and plays it in the third one just does as good a job as Judith Hogue does. It's a different take on it. Similar with the movie, this is more comedy based and Judith is more serious. Same thing happens here. Paige, thank you. Paige Turco, thank you. There's no Casey Jones in this. Like the first movie, Casey was a prominent character. He is not in this at all. He's not even mentioned. Why? Not a clue. Should they have included him? Maybe. But I also think of what they could do with him, because he's such a serious character, because he's such a serious character, but also, the hockey mask and all that. It doesn't really act kid-friendly, so I don't know what they would do with him in this movie, besides something similar to what they do in the third movie, which we'll get into in a minute. The Token Razar thing, I think the hardcore fans may have had a problem with. I don't. Like we all call them Bebop and Rocksteady. Like it's kind of the same thing. They're interchangeable characters. It's not like those two are, some, I don't want to say bastardization of it, but it's another species of animal that's turned into like there's a billion of them in the franchise. So adding two more, I don't think really matters. They do a fine job. They're idiots, and they even point that out in the movie where Shredder says they're babies. Everything grew on them except their brains. So yeah, it's okay. I don't hate it. Having, like I said, Vanilla Ice at the end, I know some people still think that is corny. I don't hate it. It's fine. It works well in the comedic factor. And he was also like a pop icon at the time. Short time, but still an icon. So I don't see a problem with that. For those who do know, and for those who don't know, Super Shredder was played by WWE wrestler Kevin Nash, who you also know as Diesel from the WWE. In his first acting role, he played Super Shredder and did a fine job. And he's got the bloody size for it. But yeah, overall, this is kind of the one that gets forgotten, I feel, because the first one gets so much praise and the third one gets so much hate. But I don't see a problem with this. Again, you have to go in as a Turtle fan knowing this is more towards the TV show. This is more humor. They're probably not pulling out their weapons as much. And if they are, they're not using them. It's just a fun kids movie. And, you can't sit there and get cranky that it's a kids movie because it wasn't made for us in this age. It's made for those kids. All right. We've gone through one. We've gone through two. It's time to go through the one that is going to get the most comments, probably. TMNT 3. No. All right. Let's stretch here because we're going to have a hot take. This is probably my favorite except for the original. And I know everyone hates this movie. They hate this movie so much. And I'm saying you're crazy. I'm saying you're crazy. This is such a good movie, in my opinion. And I will sit here and defend it for the next few minutes. First of all, this is not called Turtles in Time. That is the video game. This is simply Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 3. Now, the synopsis of this movie. April O'Neil brings back the time scepter back into the Turtles' lair, and it is activated in ancient Japan as well as in the Turtles' lair. The Turtles are then brought to ancient Japan, and the ancient Japan samurais are brought to New York. And the Turtles have to figure out a way home. And while they're there, they run into different villains that you've never seen before, including Walker, who is a guy on horseback, and there's the Japanese who they're trying to help. This is an original story, and it is so fresh and so nice to see. The biggest problem with the Turtles is that it's the same story. It falls into the Mario problem of Mario's always going to get Princess Peach. He's always going to fight Bowser. The TMNT is always going to be the Turtles are going to fight Shredder or they're going to fight Krang. And that's it. It always ends up with those two villains, usually more Shredder than Krang, if not they're on the same side. This is something different. This is them going to a different world, going into a different environment, and having to do a fish out of water type story, which they've never done. Really, they probably done in the comics and probably in the show, but to do it in a mainstream movie was quite a bold choice, and I appreciate that. I feel like if we had 3 movies of them fighting Shredder, we've seen it. Like, what do you do after you've murdered Shredder in the first one? Okay, comes back in the second one, and then he dies under a dock. Like, what do you do after a third one that isn't the same thing? Having them be in ancient Japan is such a fish out of water story that I feel like it involves the Turtles' personalities in ways that they couldn't do at home. Donnie, for example, who is the king of tech, has no tech. So it takes him completely out of his element, and he needs to figure out a way to build things and get tech without having it easily available. You've got Leo, who is pushed to the absolute brink of being a leader because all he wants to do is go home, and it's not an easy fix. That has got to be one of the hardest things to have, to try and be a leader in a world that you're not used to. You've got Raph, who is just trying to understand the world that he's in. He's still an angry person, but he's trying his best to show that anger is not going to help him now. Mikey, of all people, is the coolest character in the movie because he's showing bravery that you would not see from him in any other circumstance. He runs into a burning building to save a child. Like, that's not something you would normally see from that character. At the end of the movie, when they're all wanting to go back, Mikey doesn't want to leave because they've accepted him. I think that is some of the most character development we've seen with the Turtles in a very long time. And I think it gets overlooked because people don't like the animatronics because it's not the same suits that were in the original movie. Guess what? That's fine. As long as there's a great story, I can overlook the way that the characters act. Honestly, I think the idea of the scepter is one of the coolest ideas from a movie, from the entire Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle series. In fact, that is one of the props that I wish NECA would build, to the point where I'm contemplating finding a way to build it myself because I would love to have that prop. I think it's such a cool idea. Yeah, just having them in ancient Japan and finding out there's somewhat legends in that world, and they've been written about. And yes, there is humor in it. And you know, the ending sequence with Lord Noranaga and Walker is I think it's so entertaining. You know, them having a standoff and Walker knowing that the cannon is going to blow anything to bits, and he fires the cannon off, and Leo just drops into his shell and it flies over his head. It's funny, and I still find the humor in that, of him saying like, "You miss me." It's kid stuff, but I still find it fun. I will admit, there is, if you've ever seen the movie, when Walker falls into the water, there is a spot where it literally doesn't splash. You see him fall, and it just goes. He hits the water, and it just goes. He's gone. Thank you, Andy. You're making me want to watch this again. You really you should watch it again, because it is so much character development with them. And even Casey, as I said, Casey Jones is in this movie, and all he wants to do is beat the crap out of the guys when they come from ancient Japan, the samurais. But he doesn't. He becomes sort of a father figure to them and shows them the customs of the world, shows them hockey. And I think that is such a cool way. You know, Casey wants to come in and kick butt, and he said, and Splinter says, "No, I need you to watch over these guys." And he, without even missing a beat, because he knows how important that is, that Splinter asked him, he says, "It would be an honor." And I think that is so cool that Casey goes, "Okay, I know how important this is because you wouldn't have asked me." So guys, if you hate this movie, give it a shot and look at it with open eyes. It gets bombarded because, and 95% of the complaints are, it's not the first one. It's not. No movie is the first one. It will never be duplicated. Even Mutant Mayhem is a great movie, but it's not the first one. That is a moment in time that we will never get back. Enjoy it, but open your eyes to this one. I think you're missing out. There's my rant. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. I'm sorry. I hate hearing hate about this movie, because it's actually a very good movie if you look at it with open eyes. I just feel like everyone craps on it because it's not the first one. All right, let's jump into this next one. So this is the wild card. This movie is an interesting one, mostly because I feel like it gets forgotten, which is odd for a TMNT property, because I think every other one is remembered in some way. The first one for its adult themes. The second one for its childhood humor. The third one because most people hate it. The Michael Bay ones because of the way the turtles look. The Mutant Mayhem because of the animation. This one just gets forgotten. Does it deserve to be forgotten? Well, yeah, maybe. So the synopsis of this one, if you've never seen it or you haven't seen it in forever, there's a portal that is opened and these ancient monsters are brought in by a secret organization into New York City, and the TMNT guys have to defeat them. There's brotherly drama between them, and in the end, I don't think Shredder was a part of it. I believe it was the Foot Clan was the mastermind behind it, but Shredder isn't really the final boss. So yeah, this one is not bad, but I do understand why it's forgotten. First of all, you can tell by the poster, the design of the turtles in this one, and because it's so heavily it's an entire CGI movie, it's nothing to write home about. They're fine, but we're still in the world of everybody wanting everything to be CGI and wanting to do CGI movies as full features. And I feel like, I don't want to say if they brought them back to the drawing board, they'd get better, because I just don't think they could do it in those days. But it's just, I don't know, it's kind of just, like I said, I hate repeating myself, but it is kind of forgettable. The animation style in this is nothing to write home about. Again, it's a fine animation style. Them sliding across the power lines and the rooftops and fighting the monsters is a great look. It's just, there's nothing that stands out in this movie. You've got a storyline, which, as I said with the third one, I appreciate that it's not them fighting Shredder every time. Were ancient monsters the way to go, though? Maybe not. There is a famous, or I don't want to say famous, but the most well-known scene in this is there is a vigilante throughout the movie that is defeating monsters and solving crimes, and the TMNT don't know who it is. Screw it. We're almost 10 years, 20 years in. Raph is the vigilante. And there is a moment and a scene on top of a rooftop in the rain where Leo fights Raph in the vigilante outfit. And that's when it's discovered it's Raph. It's a great fight scene. It's a great animation. The problem is, it's probably the best part of the movie. And that's probably, I think the movie's about 2 hours long. It's about 45 minutes in. So it's nothing to, honestly, I can barely remember the ending, and I've probably seen the movie 3 times. The ancient monsters were odd. I like that they tried something new, similar to Mutant Mayhem, where they created their own characters. But I just feel like it was forgettable. But I think that also plays into the times, because everything was CGI at that point. They tried to make everything, every bit of framing that could be CGI, they tried to. And yes, this is completely CGI'd, but you get what I mean? Like, it was so much at that point that it got lost in the shuffle. And it's funny when I look at, and this might be because I own the movies, but if we go back to this, when I see this poster, I think of the theater. When I see this poster, I think of Blockbuster, because I had to rent this movie. When I see this poster, I think of VHS. When I think of this poster, I think of Walmart $5 bargain bin. Probably because it's where I've seen it the most. And that's a shame, because it's not a bad movie. I just feel like it kind of got lost in the shuffle. So, good movie if you're a big TMNT fan. Go check it out. But just nothing crazy that I would say you need to watch this. So we've gone through all of the big movies, because the next one we're gonna lump these together. The Michael Bay TMNT movies. Now you're probably wondering, there's 2. Why are you lumping them together? Well, because it's pretty much the same movie. Like, let's be honest, they didn't change much from 1 to 2. It's pretty much the same movie. So we're going to lump them into almost one world. Synopsis 1, it's paint by numbers, TMNT. Shredder shows up. They have to fight Shredder on a rooftop. Bingo bango, they win. Number 2, Shredder's there, but now Krang is the villain, which is cool because we have not seen a live action Krang yet, which a lot of people were excited about. Also in the second movie, you have Bebop and Rocksteady, which we have not seen in the movie yet. Now, this is... I don't know how I feel about this. Now, if I go with my logic from before, it is different. It is a different look of the Turtles. It is a different style. It is a different, even different characters. You've got Baxter Stockman in it. You've got Bebop and Rocksteady. You've got Krang. These are all characters that are in the TMNT world, but we've never seen before. And I appreciate that of the second one. However, it has its problems. And I think a lot of people will understand that the look of the Turtles is the problem. This is what I call the badass Turtles. This is them wanting to look like a hip hop record. And yeah, I don't hate the look. I don't like it though. I feel like the size is too big. For those who don't know the movie, these guys are towering over April and the other characters. I don't mind the detail and the over turtleness of the Turtles. I don't mind Donnie has a lot of tech. I don't mind that Raph's got the bandana, not just the eyes. It's a little too detailed for me. And this goes back. This is what I feel is the overcorrection of the last movie. We had Turtles that look very basic in the animated movie. And then Michael Bay and friends made it way too realistic. And I feel like that hurts it. And I feel like that's something that a lot of people saw this movie, if I remember correctly, because I was really into these movies when they came out because I thought it was a new version of the original. But everyone just complained about how they looked. And that's not even people, just fans. For those who don't know, Raph was motion captured by Alan Richardson, of Preacher, Alan Richardson of Reacher was the motion capture artist for Raph, and he has gone out many interviews saying he had a terrible time on the movie. He was not happy with how they were treated. He said that they were promised a lot more. They were going to be like, center stage for all the press and everything, and they got less than zero. Megan Fox and what's his name, who played Vern of all characters. By the way, if you don't know who the character Vern is from the TV show, he's April O'Neil's sidekick partner, the nerdy guy. How Vern became like the key character of this franchise, I have no idea, and I don't know why. An odd choice as a TMNT fan, but whatever. I feel like thank you. I was just about to say that, Linz. Thank you. Yeah, Stephen Amell is Casey Jones in the second movie, and when I heard that, I thought of Casey from the first movie, and thought Stephen Amell jumping in that role. I like that. I like that. He was not that Casey Jones. He's a rookie cop, and if I've heard Stephen Amell complain more in any other franchise, I don't think it exists. He whines so much in this movie, and it's not Steven's fault. It's the writing. Like, he just why don't I get to do these? Like, he just complains, and I'm sorry, that's not Casey Jones in any But yeah, when it comes to CGI, if you've seen this movie, all the turtles are CGI'd. Shredder is CGI'd. Krang is CGI. Like all the characters are CGI'd. I think at some point Megan Fox and April O'Neil is CGI'd at some point. It was the time when CGI was just, you did it. Like you just, everything was CG. If it was the easiest way to fix things and to make things, and the whole world of practical effects had kind of taken a back seat, and it suffers because of that. Like there are some designs on some of the characters that I think they do well. Bebop and Rocksteady look good, but Krang is just overkilled like crazy. And it's just the way he looks, and he's way too CGI'd. It's very similar to the Transformers franchise, and I know people hate me for saying this, but I can't stand those first couple because it's too realistic, where the Transformers are just transforming, and every little bolt and nut has to be in the frame, and it's just too much. Like you can BS it and we'll understand what it is. And I don't think they do that enough with this, where it's too realistic for me. But in an odd way, it's memorable. It's a memorable movie. At least, well, I'm combining both of them. But I do feel it is very memorable because of the look of the turtles, and because we had gone so long since the original three. Having them pop up in a realistic type movie was something of a breath of fresh air to the franchise. And I think it did help them. It brought a new generation, a new version of the Turtles. And was it made for us, the old school fans? No, it was made for a new generation. And yes, as Marcy says in chat, Seamus as Rocksteady was fun. The one, or I think like two scenes of a total, probably about 2 minutes, that he is actually Seamus as Rocksteady. Yeah, he's in it for not even that long. So I forget that he was Rocksteady before he transforms. But yeah, like overall, it's not a terrible movie. Again, you have to go into an open mind. I think all of these movies I will say the same thing for every single one of these. If you go into each of these movies and you look at them individually, they're all good movies. But if you look at them compared to this one, they're all disappointing. Like there's no other way around it. You need to put this one on its own shelf before watching the rest of them. I mean, NECA is a perfect representation. The toy company NECA is a perfect representation of this movie. And it'll show you exactly how much this means. I don't think, and I'm not lying, I don't think there's a character in this movie that has any screen time except for maybe the two guys in the cab when Casey and Raph run across it that don't have a NECA figure. Like NECA has made action figures of every character in this movie. They've made characters, most of the characters in this one. They've made a few in this one. So when you can almost recreate this entire movie with NECA toys, it's its own beast. So all of these movies are good, in my opinion. I just think you need to look at them with an open lens and an open mindset, because you can find faults with all of them. Just, if you're a TMNT fan, just enjoy them. Just enjoy them. They're made for every generation. Folks, we're at the 53-minute mark. That is all for the main event tonight. Thank you all for tuning in. If you're still here, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. It means a ton to me. I'm going to give you a few minutes back of your evening. If you weren't here at the beginning, this Sunday, Niagara Games Con, St. Catharines, Ontario, I will be there. I will have a table. I will have a table with a sign and props and 8x10s and stickers and all that fun stuff. I'm going to be there as a guest. Swing by. It's only $5 to get in. And Crystal in chat, she's going to be there too. She's going to be there with a table next to me. She's going to have a whole bunch of her cosplay stuff. She's going to have prints to autograph, put her signature on. And we're going to have a great time for a few hours in St. Catharines. And then on the Monday, she is going to be stopping by, and she's going to be a guest here on the show. We're going to talk about Gamescom, and then we're also going to be talking about sewing, something I need to work on. We're going to talk all about sewing cosplays, cosplay sewing 101, because I need some tips, and this is the best way, and hopefully you guys will pick up on some tips. So if you're a fan of Crystal, if you're a fan of me, if you're a fan of sewing, if you're a fan of Gamescom, make sure you swing by next week for Monday Night Nerd, folks. Have yourselves a good week. I love you all. It means the world that you're still hanging out with me. 73 episodes in. We're close to 100. Like, that's nuts. I'm going to be doing 100 episodes of this show. And like, I can't believe we've done 73 so far. Oh boy, I've got let me if I'm looking at my list right now, I've got 89 scheduled in my head of what we're doing. And that takes us till Christmas. Actually just after Christmas. So, we got a few to go before we hit 100, but it means a lot that you guys are sticking around and hanging out with me every Monday night. I'm going to let you get to your evening, folks. I love you all. Have yourselves a great night. Thank you for coming around and staying nerdy with me. I will see you all at Gamescom, and if I don't, I will see you here next week for Monday Night Nerd. Take care, folks. We'll see you soon. Bye-bye for now. Hey, thanks for watching Monday Night Nerd. If you enjoyed this content, please hit the subscribe button, like this content, and follow on social media for even more nerdy fun. See you soon.